in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, and I'm a Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Rukayatu Tijani. She is the founder, creator, and chief Esquire officer of Firm for the Culture. I have a lot of questions for you, but if you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, including a little bit of the company, your pronouns, and when you were younger, how did you answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Whew. Well, Christina, so great to connect with you. First of all, I love what you and your team are doing at AllVoices, not only to embrace diversity, but to really center belonging in the workspace by doing the work to allow people's voices to be heard in the overall employment and HR process. So thank you. Of course. So my preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers, just like you. And I am a proud first-generation graduate from Brooklyn, New York, and my parents hail from Lagos, Nigeria. And in terms of the question, what did I want to be when I grew up? I think a lot of that is informed by my cultural upbringing. So born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, yet the proud first generation college and law school graduate of very Nigerian parents. And if you know anything about Nigerian parents, they don't give us that many choices. That's the running joke. They don't give us that many choices when it comes to career aspirations. In their words, you are a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or an embarrassment. So fortunately for me, I wanted to be a lawyer anyways. So when I was asked the question when I was younger, after realizing I didn't want to be a doctor, I told people I wanted to be a lawyer, particularly after hearing kind of the kindergarten or grade school version of the story of Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Charles Hamilton Houston, and hearing about the amazing story that led to Brown versus Board of Education and desegregation of the public school system in the United States. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely appreciate the context and just understanding kind of your background and personal journey. I want to dig into it a little bit deeper and ask kind of how it's really informed kind of your journey up until this point to kind of found and create Firm for the Culture as well.
Yeah. So Christina, this journey has had so many ups and downs for sure. As a college graduate and law school graduate from UC Berkeley, college graduate from University at Albany, and a law school graduate from UC Berkeley School of Law, I definitely came into this space intending fully to work in corporate America until the day I died. But after a few years of being an attorney, I wanted to quit the law entirely. As the first in my family to attend law school, I didn't really know what I didn't know about navigating that space effectively, despite the accolades on my resume. At that time, I had already worked at two major top law firms in the country. I had already clerked for an Obama-appointed federal judge. So outside looking in, I had it all together. But frankly, because I didn't know how to navigate the space, that along with the abysmal lack of diversity in the legal space made me want to quit. Excuse me, but mentors and friends and family, and I would also say some divine intervention, convinced me not to quit. So I went on and joined the #1 litigation firm in the country and was highly successful as an IP attorney in the Silicon Valley. And I was in meetings with startups, VCs, the darlings of the Silicon Valley. And in virtually every space I navigated up until that point, that too just kind of lacked the diversity in thoughts, ideas, and the backgrounds that I knew we all had. So I took the bold leap of faith to start a venture, which essentially doubles as my love letter to the culture. So that's what Firm for the Culture is. It allows us to bring together our love for creativity, culture, and case law. And it's specifically designed for the founder of today to protect their creativity as they make their mark on the world. So yeah, that's my story.
I love that. I like that term you use in terms of founders who really want to create positive change and make their mark on the world too, and just help them and empower them to do that with all of the kind of skills and experience that you and your team that you've built have done as well. And I want to ask in terms of the private sector and public or, hyper growth or smaller organizations, whether they're B2C or B2B companies, a lot of folks want to engage in social impact, the triple bottom line. What is your definition of social impact within that context?
Absolutely. So to us at Firm for the Culture, because that's our ideal client, that's our target audience, social impact founders and entrepreneurs. Social impact essentially means that the organization is making an intentional and concerted effort to leave a positive and measurable impact on the world around us. And many of our clients embody that. For example, our clients have created innovative ways to provide affordable access to healthcare. They've revitalized a world of zero waste and sustainability. They've created programs to promote the rights of transgender youth and the LGBTQI community. They utilize tech for good. They promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So in terms of just the clientele, they fit within the larger private or public B2B and B2C company because each of them are intentional about creating a positive and measurable impact on the world. Now, we also like to say at Firm for the Culture that we're a social impact organization as well. In fact, a lot of people call us the Tom Shoes of legal services because for every paying client that we get, we provide free and low cost legal education to diverse and social impact entrepreneurs.
Great.
All in hopes, thank you. All in hopes that they have the tools and resources needed to protect their most valuable assets, their intellectual property.
Yeah, I mean, I love that tagline, just like comparing Tom's for shoes, because that does sound like what you are providing in terms of the resources and just the access to this opportunity as well. And I know it's really important to proactively protect these brands as well as they scale and as they're continuing to grow their team and kind of make an intentional difference. What you were talking about, I don't think kind of social impact is like a byproduct of just a nice to have. It's an intentional, concerted kind of effort there. How can entrepreneurs like really proactively protect themselves as they are scaling their business? If you had any advice for them?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's proper to discuss the basics of intellectual property, just so I can give some context to how we suggest entrepreneurs and founders and organizations best protect themselves. So generally under the umbrella of intellectual property, there is trademarks, copyrights, and patent. A trademark is a word, a phrase, a logo, sometimes even a color or a sound that's used to differentiate your business from others. So some famous trademarks include the Nike swoosh sign, right? Or Starbucks for coffee. And although there are, 1,000,001 different coffee products in the marketplace, we're able to differentiate the same exact product, essentially, across different companies by the trademark, by the mark of their trade, by their brand. So we know that by virtue of a coffee cup having the golden arches on it, it's not Starbucks, right? And we know that it's not Pete's and it's not Dunkin' Donuts because of the mark of McDonald's or Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts trade. Now, a copyright, on the other hand, shows the world that a business or an individual made an artistic or literary work, like a song, a book, or a course, even this podcast episode, that they have the exclusive right to reproduce. So copyright very literally means the right to copy, and it's come to represent the body of exclusive rights granted by law to copyright owners for the protection of their work throughout a limited time span. Now, patents, because we're in the tech field, that's the gold here. They protect what's called new and non-obvious inventions, and they give the owner exclusive use of the invention throughout a limited time span. So new generally means not disclosed to the public, and it's subject to very limited exceptions, but no one's really supposed to know about it before, if it's really patentable. And then non-obvious means that it's not a non-obvious improvement or continuation off of what's generally been known to the public, right? So if you're just simply adding another button to a TV, for instance, it's not necessarily something that's necessarily patentable. Now, if you're turning the TV into an MP3 player, that might be something that can be patentable. So an example of the difference is I like to kind of come back to the beginning of COVID for me. So when I was in the beginning of COVID, besides eating way too many cheese puffs, I was watching a lot of Netflix on my Sony
Same
TV,
here.
right? Right. So to the extent that the TV has the word Sony in the lower center or on the wrapping that the TV is sold in, then that is the trademark of Sony Corporation or Sony Incorporated, because it is the mark of Sony's trade. It is the name that's used to differentiate that product, being the TV, from other similar products in the marketplace. So we know that it's not a Toshiba TV. We know that it's not an RCA. And all of those names may inform our consumer purchasing decisions, right? And then to the extent that there's a commercial coming out of the TV or the Netflix episodes, or even the user's guide, the manual about how to engage the TV, those are all literary and artistic works in a fixed medium. The fixed medium being the user's guide or the book, or the fixed medium being the commercial in the TV or the commercial in the show, in the actual episode. So that is literary and artistic works in a fixed medium. So that's protected by copyright. And then the actual invention that is the TV, right? That's protected by patent, because at the time the TV may have been invented, it was new and non-obvious. So it wasn't necessarily a continuation off of what's been done in the past, right? Like it's not a continuation of like live theatrical productions, right? Or like a car. It's not necessarily a continuation of a horse and buggy, right? So those are things that can be patentable. So that's a little bit about the difference. And at Firm for the Culture, in terms of just kind of going back to your main question, how can entrepreneurs protect themselves as they're building their businesses? We tell entrepreneurs that if they have a brand worth protecting, they have a brand making impact. So there are a bunch of things that entrepreneurs can do to protect their brand, but I want to touch on 4 main tips. So first, grab a free trademark guide. Like we are the Tom Shoes of law firms. So we love giving out like information for free. Grab the free trademark guide from Firm for the Culture. You can grab it from the website by going to firmfortheculture.com and signing up for the guide. And I'll walk you through the entire 12 to 18 month long process of registering a trademark at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Second, and this is something that you can do today, put a small TM in the upper right-hand corner of your brand name or your marketing materials, your social media, your goods and services, or an SM if what you're selling are services. You could put a TM if you're either selling services or goods. People tend to put TM more so than SM, which is a service mark. And you can do that even if you're not federally registered. And it's really just signaling to folks in the marketplace that your word, your phrase, or logo is a brand name or a brand face of your company or organization. And when you get federally registered, you can use the R symbol, the R with the circle around it, to let the public know that you have protections under the Federal Lanham or the Federal Trademark Act. And then third, go to uspto.gov and do a quick and free knockout search of your mark. So that's and it's free. It's free 99. And it's a really good step in determining if you actually own the mark or someone else has rights to the mark. Because if someone else has a federally registered trademark or even a pending application in your industry or for similar goods or services, then you may be on the hook for 3 times the amount of damages tied to any profits that come from using your branding. So I would say definitely just go to the USPTO really quickly, do a couple of key searches and to determine if your mark is something that you should still be using or something that you might want to change. And I will say, and this is leading to the 4th point, the free search at the USPTO is what we typically call in our industry, the legal industry, a knockout search. And it's not the end all and be all of clearing your mark. So for example, if you go to USPTO, the trademark electronic search system, also known as TESS, and you search for Starbucks, for instance, you'll find over 150 records. But if you search for Starbucks and you put an extra S at the end, you won't find anything. And that's because the system is not as robust. As trademark attorneys, we're trained to put special codes and Boolean searches together to perform what's called a comprehensive search. So at Firm for the Culture, our opinion letters are typically about 200 pages on average. So I would say, besides getting the free trademark guide, putting the small TM next to your name, and going to USPTO to do a quick knockout search, reach out to us so we can perform the comprehensive trademark search just to make sure that your brand is really, really clear for you to use it in the marketplace.
I think that was definitely a comprehensive just overview for folks who are starting out as well. And I think the context is important. I definitely learned something. I love a good analogy as well to understand all of the kind of moving pieces as well, and what entrepreneurs can do to really proactively see if their kind of brand is, out there already, or if the name that they're using or the logo or anything of that nature as well, especially as they have so many kind of projects going on about their product or service and making a difference too. It's important to prioritize this as well. And I know in terms of resources, it's really important that you offer these resources to folks too. I really liked the kind of guide that you outlined in the first piece that you talked about as well. For folks or kind of companies or individuals who are starting out their own maybe like internal social impact team before kind of bringing on subject matter experts and like really looking into kind of things from an external lens, what kind of resources do you recommend for those folks?
I would say tech tools. Tech tools work. I worked in the Silicon Valley, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention, tech tools and how to incorporate tech and automations and workflows into your consumer experience and your user experience. So one of the things that has capitulated our growth is our decision to be a wholly virtual law firm, to accommodate or serve clients not only in our community, like our local community, but literally all around the world. That's the beautiful thing about trademarks. We're able to serve clients all around the country, if not the world. And for a CRM, a client relationship management tool, we like to use Dubsado because it allows us to build out entire workflows around the entire trademark application process, which on average can be about 12 months to 18 months long. So we have, steps at each pivotal part of the entire process to just notify the client when they've received, correspondences from the USPTO, or reach out to the client if they need to book an appointment with us. And for project management, because not only is the client experience important, but the team experience is actually important as well. Yeah. We use ClickUp, right? And I know other tools have included Monday, and the like. So those are, I would say, it's really important to just have a really solid tech stack earlier. And while I don't say get all the tools, I think just having one or two really, really central tools and adding them to your tech stack sooner rather than later is going to be really, really important as you scale. Because just considering just how fast the world is moving now, it's always good to just know how to automatically send a contract or an invoice rather than engaging the manual work of doing each step that might otherwise slow your progress in the process down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you definitely don't have to reinvent the wheel for certain kind of manual tasks as well. That will save you time to work on other things as well. And just prioritizing that, definitely believe in the power of technology to solve just some of those like slowdowns or just like any kind of barriers there. But I think that's helpful for folks to know too, in terms of, I mean, you have a lot of experience in Silicon Valley working with social entrepreneurs. So I'm sure you see a lot of trends, but are there any common kind of mistakes you see folks making when they're just starting out as well?
Oh my gosh, yes. So we like to call I personally like to call the USPTO the TMZ, or the shade room.
Oh my God.
Of brand names, because we get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly with pretty much everybody's trademark application. So on days that I may have some free time, I may geek out and look up Amazon's trademark applications or look up Beyonce's trademark applications, for instance. And because of that, we get to see very, very quickly, because it's a public database, who actually has applications and who doesn't, even though they may have a huge online presence. And then we wait, because I'm in the business of minding my business, because I don't go out to people. So one of the most common mistakes that I've seen from my perspective is a lot of big companies not protecting their IP because they don't think it's an important or integral part of the process.
Mhm.
One great example is Clubhouse, right? So I was a part of the small beta group invited to test out the features of that awesome platform, right? And in true trademark geek fashion, I looked to see, like I looked on the USPTO/TMZ/Shade Room to see if they had an application on file. And they didn't, even while in beta mode. And because I am team mind your business all day, every day, I didn't share that with them. But also I'm an attorney, so I can't solicit people, just as an ethical guideline. And it remained, and they still didn't have an application, even though their valuation grew to over $4 billion, right? And recently they were sued by SBS Consulting Group, who said in its complaint that was filed in the federal court in Arizona that the Clubhouse app infringed upon the trademark it received for the Clubhouse, right? See how similar these names are.
Yes.
And the Clubhouse that's owned by the SBS Consulting Group, which is not actually, Clubhouse as we know it, is a networking site for sports business professionals. So at the time, even though Clubhouse, the actual, the talking app,
right,
even though they were in beta mode, they could have filed something as simple as an intent to use application, or they could have conducted a pre-clearance search that could have solved this issue. I think if they had done that, they would have known, okay, there is an organization operating in Arizona. Let's either, talk to this organization to see if we can get like a license or an assignment agreement, or at the very least, let's see if we should change our name or consider alternative options. But it doesn't seem like they did that. Like, I don't know what's went on behind closed doors, but all I know is that Clubhouse did not have an application during their beta mode. So now they could be forced to stop using the name Clubhouse, and they would have to fork over 3 times the amount of profit they received from their app. So you're talking about a $4 billion app, right? Valuated at $4 billion. They could fork over, and not saying that valuation is the same as revenue, as we saw in the case of WeWork, but but they could be forced to fork over a bunch of money because they didn't take the time to either pre-clear their search or even file an application at the USPTO so as to maintain their priority at the USPTO. So when you think about the amount of money and time that you may have invested in your brand, including products, signage, vehicle wrapping, uniforms, online presence, social media, marketing, radio, television, it becomes clear that having to start over could be disastrous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not to mention hugely expensive, right? So making sure that you protect your IP because it matters. And at Firm for the Culture, we like to say preparing for the overflow is something that you can start doing today and not have to wait until you make $4 billion. In fact, don't wait until you have a $4 billion valuation.
Yeah, you should really invest the time to do that, because I think in that example too, it's just something that can be preventable. And if you're going to invest this money and time and resources into marketing and advertising, and you get to this point and then you're just like, oh, I could have done this beforehand, it is like a little bit of a cautionary tale there. And there are resources, like you mentioned, to really do that kind of work up front and just like front load that as well.
Exactly.
Do you think, in terms of also like your experience, that companies have in general just responsibility to make an arm of their business have a positive impact on their community, or is that not like a need to have for businesses?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really awesome question, Christina, because I think that companies should definitely think about how to incorporate social impact into their business model.
Yeah.
But as a lawyer who works with a lot of small businesses with limited resources, like we're not working with, Salesforce, right? At least not yet. we have to be flexible about requiring companies to engage social responsibility initiatives, particularly if their resources are low. So I'm thinking, for instance, about the one-person firm, right? Or the one-person business that provides t-shirts to organizations around the country. That in of itself is expensive in terms of sweat equity, in terms of manpower, in terms of just getting the work done. So will I say now that they're responsible for providing a free t-shirt to a child in need for every t-shirt that someone buys, like Tom's shoes? No, probably not. But perhaps they can think about sharing their vendor list, right? Because that can be a trade secret to some extent, a really valuable trade asset, or having an apprenticeship program, right? So it's important to understand that social impact and social responsibility, if done right, right? Because some people don't do it right. If actually done right, takes work, and it takes time, and it takes money and resources. So as a person who considers themselves privileged, I think, and as a person that navigates very privileged spaces, I think we should think critically about requiring all organizations at all stages of the growth cycle to make a meaningful contribution to the communities in a way that we see fit, because it's not a one size fits all kind of paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a kind of a nuanced question and answer to. It's definitely not black and white, and just in understanding the context behind how large the organization is and where they want to make an impact too. If you prioritize everything, you're not prioritizing anything. So just like, again,
Yes.
very intentional about what you want the impact to be as well, I guess, on the flip side. So would there be like any trends you're seeing in the social impact space that companies and individuals need to be aware of in order to be successful in the future of work that we're kind of seeing unfold right now?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of going back to the need for social impact organizations in particular to understand the value of their creative contributions to the culture.
Mhm.
I think when I was, not I think, I know from my experience, when I was working as an IP attorney in this top litigation firm and having meetings and engaging, that network, the conversations around intellectual property didn't touch on the smaller companies who weren't Facebook or Salesforce or Instagram or Twitter. Like if they were not, FANG, the FAANG, or if they weren't Spotify or Pinterest, it wasn't encouraged for these organizations to protect their intellectual property. Yet we're seeing a lot of news about smaller individuals and smaller companies getting their IP taken without much recourse because they haven't been encouraged to protect their intellectual property or encouraged to see the value in protecting their intellectual property. And particularly in the social impact space, I see a lot of people not protecting their brand because they feel like doing so is antithetical to the idea of social impact. Because a lot of people feel like protecting their brand would take it out of the public domain. And that's a myth. And that's a myth that I've had to kind of like demystify over and over again. And that's simply not true. In fact, protecting your brand can ensure that your goods and services, to the extent that they're being sold under your brand, is coming from you and not a competitor or poser or somebody who just wants to put up a fake Instagram account, right? So one example that I often think of is Black Lives Matter. So Black Lives Matter was founded by Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, right? In July 2013, the movement began with the use of the hashtag Black Lives Matter on social media after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the shooting death of, Trayvon Martin, right? And it's been on the national stage ever since then, including, showing up for Eric Garner in 2014, Michael Brown in 2014, Sandra Bland in 2015, the presidential election in 2016, but they didn't file for trademark registration until October 2017, right? And less than 6 months later, they got hit with the rejection or refusal. So one refusal that's been really commonly coming out at the USPTO is called the failure to function refusal. And it essentially stands for the idea that if your brand gets so famous that everybody's essentially using it, then no one person should be able to own it, right? Wow. So the USPTO's, in rejecting Black Lives Matter's application, they noted several articles, including a recent CNN article on Black Lives Matter, where they noted that Black Lives Matter, the movement, pushed itself into the national conversation over and over again. And they said it really is the case that because everybody can join Black Lives Matter simply by creating a Facebook page or using a hashtag, it's not necessarily clear what person or organization would own the brand Black Lives Matter, right? So on one hand, kind of a victory because everybody can use it. But on the other hand, when it comes to understanding who the source of Black Lives Matter is, it gets really problematic, particularly if you want to give donations to an organization that is Black Lives Matter. So let's fast forward to 2020 in light of George Floyd and the civil unrest. During that time, employees of Apple, Google, and Microsoft raised over $4 million, but it was actually for the wrong Black Lives Matter organization, right? So we have the Black Lives Matter Foundation, which I would say is the fake Black Lives Matter organization. And then you have the Black Lives Matter Global Network, which is like the real Slim Shady, right? So the Black Lives Matter Foundation was founded in Santa Clarita, California by a guy who put up a GoFundMe page that has a PO box. And because a bunch of people thought that was the real Black Lives Matter organization, they donated millions, literally millions of dollars to that, GoFundMe or that wrong Black Lives Matter organization, essentially taking the money away from the organization, from the international racial justice movement that sought to end police brutality, the real Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter Global Network. And that's but one of many examples that I've seen in the social impact space where organizations, because they didn't in the beginning understand or see the importance, or actually, were against protecting their intellectual property, really stifled social impact efforts. So there are ways that you can still protect the social impact by protecting your intellectual property. You can have assignment agreements, you can have licensing agreements. If you protect your intellectual property, you can stop people who are not necessarily aligned with the culture or not necessarily aligned with the values of your organization from even utilizing your IP. I remember one moment where I think Trump wanted to come out with Happy by Pharrell, right? And Pharrell forbid him
like, no, thank you.
From coming out with the song. But that speaks to the power of not only using intellectual property as a shield, but also as a sword, right? So, or Twitter, because they own the patents or because they own the actual the platform, they stopped Trump from having a voice. So these are things that we can do to still protect the most vulnerable populations while still promoting our social impact initiatives.
Yeah, I really like the kind of analogy you use as using it as a sword and not a shield, because it is about being proactive. And the examples that you outlined too just show the power of dollars, the power of social media. It's really important that you protect the brand and the company, the culture that you are creating as well. I do want to ask a little bit around kind of the story you shared in the beginning and just the organization kind of that you founded around the First Generation Purpose Project. Can you share some best practices that employers should have in place to really support, foster, cultivate first gen team members?
Yeah, no, for sure. So thank you for raising that, Christina, because that's the First Generation Purpose Project is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
It's actually my first business. So the First Generation Purpose Project is an initiative designed to help first generation professionals navigate life and career by utilizing the grit and the tenacity that's already in them, in us. So if you're a particularly big organization, I would say providing opportunities for people to give back to the communities that mean something to them is really pivotal when it comes to diverse employees and team members at your organization. So for instance, when I was in this big law firm, I was able to work pro bono on a domestic violence dispute case. So as a person who grew up in the projects of Brooklyn, New York, in a domestically violent environment, using my legal skills and getting paid essentially to use my legal skills to help survivors meant the world to me. So it was a blessing when the law firm supported me in taking the first chair. And the first chair is pretty much saying that in the legal space, it's just it's a way of saying I like spearheaded the case in a domestic violence case for a client for the local superior court. So really providing opportunities for people to give back to their community, whether it's by providing them a certain amount of money that they can give to an organization that's meaningful to them. I believe Salesforce does that. Or providing a day to go back to a community that you might have grown up in if you're still local, to help students or help kids that look like you, look like us. Organizations that can provide that statistically, because I remember reading an article about it. Statistically, maintain their employees, because more employees, more millennials, according to the Deloitte survey of 2019, more employees, more millennials are actually staying or leaving companies based on the social impact that they provide.
Yeah, I believe it.
So being able to not only promote social impact initiatives, but do it in a way that allows for employees to choose social impact initiatives that are most meaningful to them, I really think is going to help maintain diverse team members in organizations around the country.
Yeah, and I think over this past kind of 18 months as well, a lot of people are reflecting on the work that they're doing, the mission of the company, and kind of the impact they're having on the community as well. So I think that is really important. And I can definitely see that this is something that you are passionate about, and also all the work you're doing at the organization as well, and just the people that you work with too at, Firm for the Culture. And I'm sure you have so many of these, but if you are thinking about kind of a recent one, what is one of your kind of proudest moments where you were either in that moment of flow or thinking all of the kind of fruit of your labor was just rewarded there?
Oh, wow. So it's actually, interestingly enough, it's not necessarily work related, but it does get me excited. So I just purchased my first house.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you. That's very exciting. Thank you. And the reason why I wanted to note that is because I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I am a full-time entrepreneur. And if you know anything about entrepreneurship and home ownership, they ask you for pretty much every document, including probably a blood sample and
Yeah.
the name of your firstborn, right? Because they want to prove that you're actually making the money
Yeah.
to keep up with the mortgage payments. So to have been able to provide the requisite evidence or the requisite documentation to get this, to be able to have this equity and this asset has been dynamic. And it really speaks to the power of social impact in terms of what we're doing at Firm for the Culture. So when I started Firm for the Culture, we were very intentional about making sure that we helped social impact entrepreneurs protect their brands. And we did get a lot of pushback. A lot of people told us that we weren't going to be profitable. A lot of people told us that we weren't going to make a lot of money because social impact organizations were often conflated with primarily nonprofit organizations, even though social impact encompasses all of that and past that. So to be able to essentially, make a sustainable living and make a sustainable income off of assisting and providing tools and opportunities to social impact founders and organizations at flat fee accessible rates has just been a blessing. And it's culminated in the purchase of real property. So that's been the project that I've been most proud of.
That's incredible. Also, I just think that buying a home is just it's so exciting, and the fact that you did it as an entrepreneur, doing something that you love and helping people do something really meaningful in the world is just, I think that is incredible. So congratulations, and also
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing with us as well. I know we talked about a lot from your personal journey and the work you're doing and advice that you have for entrepreneurs, but is there any thing that I didn't ask that you want to share, or 1 to 2 key takeaways that you hope people bring with them as they kind of listen to our episode?
Yeah, no, for sure. And thank you, Christina, for having me. Again, AllVoices is lit. It's amazing.
Thank you.
The podcast is awesome. The API is awesome. Just the color schema. It's just
Thank
everything.
you.
So I do have a couple of takeaways. So first, I just want to reemphasize, if you have a brand's making impact, you have a brand's worth protecting.
Mm-hmm.
And on a related note, prepare for the overflow. I really do believe that we are in a new age of how work works. We're in a renaissance, I'd say. People are redefining the workspace to accomplish equity, inclusion, and belonging, and financial freedom. Mm-hmm. So the creative ideas that are coming out of this time will really benefit us for generations to come. And I would say, as an entrepreneur, particularly in the social impact space, prepare for that. Prepare with the idea that your business is going to actually take off. I think oftentimes as we go into entrepreneurship or start a new initiative, we kind of prepare ourselves for failure. But what happens if you actually prepared yourself to take off? And are you asking yourself, are you properly positioned to simply receive that which you know you deserve? Are your trademarks protected? Are your contracts drafted? Are your partnership agreements in place? Are your systems and processes in place? If not, by the time the overflow comes, because it will come, that's just a product of your amazing creativity and diligence, you could be on the hook for trademark infringement. Like think about Clubhouse, for instance.
Yeah.
It just happened to not only Clubhouse, but a few of my clients after 3 or 4 years of not having filed their trademark. I can recall a specific, because we talked about this on another podcast episode for one of my clients. I could recall a specific case in which they just had their millionth podcast download. And they found out that they could not go forward with their brands.
Oh,
So
no.
just think about how like traumatic that can be for some organizations who may have been at that stage of the business growth cycle or even farther along. So prepare for the overflow so you can enjoy the benefits of your work later.
Absolutely. I think those are good key takeaways. Prepare for the overflow. Thank you so much for taking the time to kind of discuss these best practices and your insights with us and share advice for entrepreneurs who are in this space, and the work you're doing for the culture, I think, is really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. It's been a blessing.
And as a reminder for folks who are listening, AllVoices believes in the empowerment of everyone at a company to succeed. And we know it's a requirement for the organization to be successful. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.